Today, we are going to discover the story of a woman who dared to challenge the greatest empire the world had ever seen. Her name was Boudica, the queen who refused to kneel. She was not born to be a legend. She was a mother, a wife, a queen of a Celtic tribe in ancient Britain, the Iceni. But when the mighty Romans came, with their iron, their armies, and their greed, they did not expect what was about to rise against them. This is not just a story of war. It is a story of injustice, unfair treatment, revenge, and freedom, of a woman whose courage still echoes across centuries. In a world ruled by men, she stood alone, leading thousands into battle. When Rome took her land, she took their pride. When they broke her family, she broke their silence. Her rebellion burned cities to the ground, Londinium, Camulodunum, Verulamium, all turned to ash. But behind the fire was a heart, fierce, wounded, and unforgettable. And today we will walk through her journey, from peace to pain, from queen to warrior, from woman to legend. This is the story of Boudica, the woman who made Rome tremble. Dear champions, share your feedback in the comments below. If you want to get free PDFs, then join our WhatsApp channel. Chapter 1. The Calm Before the Storm. Long before the fire, before the battles, before her name was whispered in fear, there was peace. Boudica was born into a land of forests, rivers, and open skies, ancient Britain, around 30 AD. Her tribe, the Iceni, lived in the east of what we now call England. They were proud, independent people, farmers, warriors, and believers in old gods. When Boudica became queen, her husband Prasutagus, ruled wisely. He was not a fool. He knew the Romans were powerful. They had already conquered much of Britain, bringing their roads, laws, and soldiers, but Prasutagus tried to make peace. He ruled as a client king, a local ruler allowed to govern under Roman authority, loyal to Rome, yet still free in his land. He hoped that by cooperating, working together, his people could survive between power and peace. And for a time, it worked. The Iceni grew rich from trade. Their fields produced crops. Their warriors trained for defense, not war. Boudica, with her long red hair and commanding presence, stood as both queen and mother, respected by her people, feared by her enemies. But peace with Rome was never built on trust. It was built on control. Roman officials, government officers, often looked down on local tribes, calling them barbarians, uncivilized people. To them, Boudica's people were not partners. They were property. And as long as her husband lived, peace remained. But life and empires often change when a king dies. In the winter winds of 60 AD, King Prasutagus died, and with him the thin line between peace and war began to break. Chapter 2. The Spark of Rebellion. The fire of rebellion began with betrayal. When King Prasutagus, the ruler of the Iceni tribe, died around 60 CE, he left a will. He wanted his land to be shared between his daughters and the Roman emperor, hoping this would keep peace. But the Romans did not respect his wishes. The Roman governor and soldiers took the Iceni lands, stole their money, and treated the nobles like slaves. Boudica, the queen and widow of Prasutagus, spoke out against this unfair treatment. The Romans punished her cruelly. They whipped her in public, flogged, and hurt her daughters. Their actions were meant to scare and humiliate her and her people. Instead, it made Boudica stronger. Her sadness and anger turned into determination. She decided to fight the Romans to protect her people and take back their land. Soon, other tribes joined her. The Trinovantes, who had also suffered under Roman rule, came to fight with the Iceni. Farmers, warriors, and women all prepared to stand together. Boudica stood before them, tall and brave, her hair flowing, holding a spear in her hand. She spoke words that would echo forever. "We fight for our homes, for our people, and for freedom." From that moment, rebellion was no longer a thought. It had a leader, Boudica, and it was ready to fight. Chapter 3. The Storm Unleashed. The morning of battle came like a quiet before a storm. The air was heavy, but the hearts of Boudica's warriors were burning with anger and hope. The Romans had treated their people cruelly, but now the Iceni and their allies would show that no empire could break their spirit. Boudica rode at the front, tall and commanding, her long red hair flowing like fire. Behind her, tens of thousands of warriors marched. Farmers had taken up swords, women carried spears, and the warriors from other tribes had joined them. Together, they formed a force the Romans had not expected. The first city they attacked was Camulodunum, modern Colchester. This city had been built by the Romans as a symbol of power. Its walls were strong, but Boudica's army was stronger in spirit. They stormed the city, setting fire to homes and temples. Flames rose high and smoke covered the sky. The Roman soldiers tried to defend it, but they were overwhelmed by the sheer number of rebels. Thousands of Roman settlers and soldiers were killed. Boudica's army did not spare anyone who had helped oppress her people. It was brutal, yes, but it was justice in the eyes of those who had suffered for years. After Camulodunum, the rebellion moved to Londinium, modern London. This was a city of trade, full of wealth and Roman authority. Again, the Romans were caught off guard. Boudica's army destroyed the city, burning buildings and chasing out those who had sided with Rome. Next was Verulamium, modern St. Albans. The rebels were relentless. Every city that had stood as a symbol of Roman oppression was attacked. Fires, screams, and the cries of vengeance echoed across the lands. Boudica herself did not fight with anger alone. She inspired her people with words and courage. Her presence on the battlefield was like a storm. She moved among her warriors, speaking, pointing, and leading, showing them that a queen could fight alongside her people, not just watch from the throne. For a brief moment, it seemed like nothing could stop them. The Roman army was scattered, and Boudica's rebellion seemed unstoppable. The tribes had shown that even the mightiest empire could be challenged by courage, unity, and anger fueled by injustice. But Rome was not finished. The governor Suetonius Paulinus returned with his trained legion, disciplined and organized. Boudica's army, though vast and powerful, was made of tribes who had never faced Roman soldiers in a direct battle. The stage was set for the final confrontation, a battle that would decide the fate of Britain and the legacy of its queen. Chapter 4. The Final Battle. The two forces faced each other across the open plain. On one side stood Boudica and her army of tens of thousands, farmers, warriors, and tribes united by anger and hope. On the other, the disciplined Roman legions, trained for war, equipped with armor, shields, and long spears. Boudica's army was fierce but untrained in organized battle. The Romans, led by Gaius Suetonius Paulinus, were fewer in number but experienced and disciplined. The battle began with a roar. Boudica's warriors charged, shouting their war cries, waving swords and spears. The Romans held their lines, moving like a wall of iron, shields locked together. At first, the rebels pushed forward, overwhelming the Roman flanks in some places. Fires burned in the distance. Camulodunum, Londinium, and Verulamium had already fallen. The smell of smoke, dust, and sweat filled the air. But the Romans were strategic. They drew Boudica's army into a narrow area, where the massive warriors could not use their numbers effectively. The disciplined Romans struck with precision, surrounding the Iceni and their allies. Boudica fought bravely. She rode at the front, urging her people to hold their ground. Her voice cut through the chaos. "We fight for our homes. We fight for our children. We will not bow to Rome." But even courage and anger could not defeat experience and training. The Roman legions crushed the rebels. Thousands were killed. Boudica's army was scattered, fleeing through forests and fields. Historians are not sure exactly what happened to Boudica, but most records say she took her own life, killed herself, to avoid capture. The woman who had united tribes, burned cities, and challenged the mightiest empire of the world had fallen. But her spirit did not die. Though defeated, Boudica became a symbol of resistance. She showed that even the greatest powers could be challenged by courage, justice, and determination. For generations, her story inspired people to stand against oppression and fight for freedom. Her rebellion lasted only a few months, but the memory of her courage lived for centuries. The Iceni and other tribes suffered losses, but Boudica's legend grew. A queen who dared to stand, even when the odds were impossible. The legacy of Boudica's rebellion was defeated. Her army scattered, her life lost. Yet her story did not vanish. It grew stronger with time. She became more than a queen. She became a symbol, a sign of courage and justice. A reminder that even a single person, with enough bravery and determination, can challenge the most powerful forces. Think about it. A woman, standing against the greatest empire of her time, leading thousands of ordinary people, farmers, women, warriors, to fight for their freedom. She risked everything, knowing the chances of victory were small. And yet, she acted because she could not stand silence in the face of injustice. Her rebellion lasted only months, but the lessons from it are timeless. Courage is contagious. When Boudica stood up, thousands followed. One brave heart can inspire a whole nation. Injustice sparks action. The Romans thought punishment would break her spirit. Instead, it ignited her people's desire for freedom. Leadership is about heart, not fear. Boudica didn't command from a throne. She fought with her people. That made them trust and follow her. For English learners, Boudica's story also teaches something unique. Her speeches, her bravery, her decisions show how words, actions, and emotions work together to change the world. Listening to her story helps learners understand cause and effect, history, vocabulary, and human feelings in simple words. Even today, when we see statues of Boudica in London or read her story in books, we feel her fire, not just as a warrior, but as a teacher of resilience, showing us how anger at injustice can be transformed into purpose. Boudica reminds us that history is not only about dates, battles, or empires. It is about people. People with dreams, fears, families, and courage. People who rise when the world tells them to bow. People whose spirit echoes through time, inspiring generations. And here's something for all of us to remember. Even if your battle seems impossible, even if the world is bigger and stronger than you can still make a difference. Boudica's story is not just history. It is a lesson in courage, justice, and standing tall, no matter the odds. So when you face your own challenges, small or large, think of Boudica, a queen who refused to bow, whose fire still burns today, reminding us all to fight for what is right. Her rebellion was crushed. Her life was lost. But her spirit, that will never die.